Kia ora. Okay, let's get into it. When we're looking at setting your child up to be successful at school, basically everything like we've discussed that they're going to do in school is in brain number 4, the brain you've got, the dog hasn't got. But brain 4 very much sits on top of brain number 3. So if you're really talking about getting a child ready for school, getting them set up to be successful, then the first thing you do is make sure that brain number 3 is reaching its full potential. Then you've got the right foundations in place for all this wonderful frontal cortex, literacy and numeracy. So brain number 3 is called the limbic system. We went over that in the first instalment, and that's where your self-esteem sits, where what the literature calls your dispositions. Dispositions are basically just a set of attitudes or beliefs. So like for instance, New Zealand has a really positive disposition towards rugby. You mention rugby to most New Zealanders and you're going to get a positive response from most people. Our beliefs, our behaviours, our actions about rugby are generally positive, so we have a positive disposition towards rugby. New Zealand in contrast has a negative disposition towards tall poppies. If you stand up in a room and say, oh, I love me, I'm amazing, like you might get a round of applause in America, but in New Zealand you're going to get, that's not going to get a good response. We don't like people promoting themselves. So we have a negative set of beliefs and behaviours about self-promotion. We even have that whakatauki, the kumara does not talk about how sweet it is, meaning be humble. So we don't, our disposition towards self-promotion, we don't like, it's whakahihi. Yeah, what you need to understand with brain number 3, when the literature's talking about dispositions, they're not talking about, kumara or rugby, they're talking about your disposition towards yourself as a learner. What that means in the plainest language is under the age of 7, between 2 and 7, that's when you're traditionally in brain number 3, that's when it's really coming online. The easiest, simplest way I can say this information is that between the ages of 2 and 7, it doesn't matter very much how clever your child is. What matters between the ages of 2 and 7 is how clever your child thinks they are. Your perception of yourself and how clever you think you are is the foundation for how clever you will be. You're not going to get a more intelligent child by trying to make them clever at 3, and then you put them under whole lots of pressure that makes them think that they're not performing well enough. So the easiest way I can explain this is to say that if I've got 2 children and say child A and child B, and their parents are in the same amount of money, come from the same cultural background, have the same education, all the stats are the same for child A and B, and they were born on the same day, and they're both going to turn 5 tomorrow and start school. Child A can count to 100, knows all of his alphabet, can write his name, knows his colours. Child B, he can only sort of count to 20, everything goes a bit awry. He sometimes knows his colours, other times most of the time he just calls everything blue because that's his favourite colour. So most people are going to think child A is the one that's all ready for school. What I need you to understand is under the age of 7 we can't predict who's going to be doing the best at 32 based on the information I've just given you. That's all about cognitive skill, literacy and numeracy, things in the cortex. Those things won't become relevant until the age of 7, then we can start using them to predict outcomes. Under the age of 7, for brain number 3, basically those cognitive things like literacy and numeracy average out, plateau out at about the age of 8. That means your 8-year-old that started to learn to read at 3 will typically have the same reading age as the 8-year-old beside him who didn't start learning to read till they were 7. So there's no real advantage to learning to be 7 early and learning your numbers and your alphabets. That does no harm, obviously, but it's not the advantage parents think. What you need under 7 is to meet the needs of brain number 3, which is your disposition towards yourself as a learner. So again, it is more important what you think of yourself under the age of 7, what you think of your ability to learn, than it is of how much you can actually perform in terms of alphabet, colours and numbers. So these 2 kids, A and B, starting school tomorrow, all the stats are the same, but he's got all the cognitive skills and the numbers and stuff. This kid just counted 20 calling every colour blue. If you want to predict which of these 2 children is going to be the highest qualified and earning the most money and least likely to have gone to prison by 32, then we absolutely can predict that with a high degree of accuracy, but it's got nothing to do with their colours and their numbers and their alphabet. The only way we can predict that under the age of 7 is to work with brain number 3, which is to predict if you can identify their disposition towards themselves as a learner under the age of 7, then that will correlate with their success. So put in plain terms, this kid that can count to 100, this kid that's only counted to 20, what we need to understand is what is their disposition towards themselves as a learner. So we say to child A, or child A goes, Mum, I can count to 100, 1, 2, 99, 100. And then Mum responds by going, and what comes after 100? It's not hard, son, you just go back to the start and you just do whatever, you do add the first number on again. So I can do the first one for you. It goes 100, then back to the start, 101. So what would the next number be? The child's, eventually the child might work out, 102. But if we said to this child, mate, what are you like as a learner? Because that's how you find out their disposition. What are you like as a learner? There's a good chance this child is going to say, not quite good enough. There was clearly an expectation that I should know what comes after 100. I wasn't considered clever knowing to count to 100. There was an expectation I should do more. So my disposition towards myself as a learner is I'm not quite as clever as I need to be. Now child B, he's just been in a free play environment. He's only calling every colour blue and, counting to 20. Now you say to him, mate, what are you like as a learner? And this child goes, sweet, it's all good. If I can't do it, mum usually helps me, or dad, or I ask the teacher, or, I just keep trying, I can usually work it out. So yeah, I'm a pretty good learner, cheers. This is the child under 7 that is more likely to have a degree at 32. This child under 7 that has that attitude is less likely to have gone to prison by 32. Now, all of the good stats under the age of 7 are with child B, not child A. So you really need to take on board the message that you do not get a better 7-year-old by starting to practice to be 7 when you're 4, 5 and 6. You get a better 7-year-old if at 4, 5 and 6 you are meeting the needs of a 4, 5 and 6-year-old, which is largely limbic, brain number 3, dispositions. A child needs to learn to love learning before you worry about what he's actually learning. Kia ora whānau.